It's a strange thing to believe something completely and still feel like it isn't quite yours. You've felt it. In a service, maybe. Reading late at night. In a song that got past your defenses for 3 or 4 minutes. Something opens. You feel it in your chest. That ache that isn't sadness and isn't joy either. And then it closes, and you go back to being a person who heard about it. That's the part almost nobody says out loud, because it doesn't sound like a spiritual problem. It isn't doubt. You're not doubting anything. You defend it if someone attacked it in front of you. It's smaller and stranger than doubt. You believe every word of it, and you still feel like a guest. Like standing on a sidewalk in winter, looking through a lit window at a family sitting down to dinner. Warm in there, real in there, and you outside, breath fogging the glass. Welcome to look as long as you want. Maybe you decided that was just how it works, that the closeness belongs to the saints, the mystics, the ones with the kind of faith you were never quite able to manufacture, or that it comes later, after you die, after you've earned it, after somebody decides you're ready. Hear me before we go any further. That distance was built, not by God and not by your failure to feel enough. There is one sentence in the Gospels that was meant to end it. 6 words said out loud, in public, in front of people he knew would not take it well. It has been quoted for 2,000 years, carved into stone, printed on covers, recited in creeds by people who never once suspected it had anything to do with them. You have almost certainly heard it, and almost every time you did, it was handed to you as a description of him, of his nature, of the very thing that made him different from you. The men standing in front of him when he actually said it did not hear it that way at all. He said it in the temple, in winter, surrounded by men who had been pressing him for weeks to give them a straight answer. 6 words. I and the Father are one. What happens next is right there in the text, and it is not subtle. They bent down and picked up stones, not offended, not walking away shaking their heads, reaching for rocks to kill him with, in the middle of a religious festival, in a holy place. When he asked them which good work they were stoning him for, they answered him plainly, not for anything he had done, for blasphemy, because you, they said, a man, are making yourself God. To understand why that was worth killing over, you have to understand what God was to them. God was up there, unreachable, unseeable, wrapped in law and priesthood and ritual, with a name too holy to speak out loud. God was in heaven, and man was dust on the ground, and the entire structure of their religious world rested on the size of the gap between the two. Read that again, chosen ones, because it tells you exactly what they heard. Not poetry. Not a rabbi describing how closely his will lined up with heaven's. They heard a man standing on 2 feet in front of them collapse the distance between the human and the divine, and they understood immediately that if that sentence were allowed to stand, everything built on top of that distance came down with it. And here is the strangest detail in the entire scene, the one that almost never gets read aloud. He could have corrected them. One sentence would have done it. He could have said, "You've misunderstood me. I'm speaking of agreement, of obedience, of doing my Father's will." He didn't. With stones already in their hands, he said something that made it considerably worse. What he said next was a question. Standing in front of men holding rocks, accused of making himself God, he asked them whether it wasn't written in their own law. I said, "You are gods." He was quoting their scripture back at them, not a fringe text, not something from the margins. A line sitting in the Psalms they had memorized as children. A line in which God addresses a group of people and calls them gods. Understand what just happened there. He was accused of claiming a status that belonged to no man, and instead of softening it, instead of explaining that they had taken him too literally, He reached into their own book and showed them that the category had never been as narrow as they were told. If Scripture called them gods, he said, and Scripture cannot be broken, why are you calling it blasphemy when I say it about myself? He didn't defend his uniqueness. He widened the door. That is the sentence under the sentence, and it changes what the 6 words were for. They were not a confession of a nature no one else could share. They were a demonstration, performed out loud, in public at maximum cost, in front of witnesses who would repeat it for 2,000 years. The Gnostic teachers understood this better than anyone who came after them. In the Gospel of Thomas, one of the texts pulled out of the ground at Nag Hammadi, he says it without any of the hedging. Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me, and I will become him, and what was hidden will be shown to him. Not admire me, not worship from an appropriate distance. Become. And in his own prayer, hours before he was arrested, he asked for exactly this. Not that his followers would agree with each other, not that they would behave. He prayed that they would be one, and he named the measure he wanted used. As you, Father, are in me and I in you, may they also be one in us. The same word, the same unity. Requested out loud for people who were not him. This is where the monad stops being a distant idea and starts being a description of you. The source is not a being seated somewhere above the world, sorting applications. It is the whole, and what came out of it was never separated from it, only scattered and covered and made to forget. You are not standing outside the ocean asking to be let in. You are a drop of it that has spent its whole life being told the ocean lives somewhere else. Now hear the part almost everyone gets wrong, chosen ones, because it is the exact place where this teaching turns poisonous if it is picked up by the wrong hand. This is not the discovery that your ego is God. The small self, the one that keeps score, needs to be right, needs to be seen, needs to win the argument at dinner. That self is not the thing being described here. It is the thing standing in front of it. The men reaching for stones heard a man exalting himself, and if the sentence is spoken from the throne of the ego, that is exactly what it becomes. A claim, a promotion, spiritual arrogance wearing Scripture as a costume. Look at how he carried it instead. He washed feet. He let himself be doubted. He didn't demand a single thing his position would have entitled him to. Unity with the source produced the opposite of self-importance in him, and that is the tell. Anyone who touches this and comes back louder, prouder, more certain of their superiority over other people, has touched something else entirely. Here is the part that was never meant to stop with him. If the sentence is true, and it isn't a claim, then it isn't something you achieve or earn or argue your way into. It is something you remember, which raises the only question left worth asking tonight. Why can't you say it yet? Because something else is already sitting in the seat. Every one of us has a throne, and almost none of us chose who occupies it. For some people, it's the need to be right, the argument replaying at 2 a.m, the correction you're still composing. For others, it's approval, the constant low hum of checking how you landed. For most people, it's control, the belief that if you stop holding the whole thing up with both hands, it collapses. Whatever is sitting there is not you. It is the part of you that was assembled by fear, and it has been running the room for so long that you mistake its voice for your own. And that is the reason the 6 words don't work in your mouth yet. Spoken from that seat, they don't mean what he meant. They mean, look at me. They come out as a promotion. So the practice isn't the sentence, not first. Tonight, wherever you happen to be, no special room, no particular hour, say out loud what held the throne today. Be specific and be plain about it. Today it was needing to be right. Today it was needing her to notice. Today it was control. Naming it is the entire act. You are not fighting it, arguing with it, or asking it to leave. You are simply saying out loud that you can see it. which is something it has never once had to survive before. The small self runs on not being seen. It stays in the seat by being mistaken for you. The instant you say its name out loud, in your own voice, the disguise stops working. Not forever, not permanently, but for long enough. Then, and only then, say the 6 words, I and the Father are one. Not as a claim, not as an achievement you just unlocked. Say it the way you would repeat directions someone gave you a long time ago and you're finally following, as something you were shown, not something you earned. Here is what will happen the first few times, and I want you ready for it. The ego will reach up and catch the sentence in midair. You'll feel it as a small lift, a warmth, a quiet sense of being one of the ones who knows. The moment you notice that, stop and name it too. Say, that was pride, and it isn't the one speaking. Then begin again. That reflex, catching it, naming it, starting over, is the practice, not the words. The words are just what you say once the seat is empty. Let me be straight with you about what this is, chosen ones. Nobody in the 2nd century wrote this down as a nightly exercise. What they wrote down is the warning that this sentence is unusable while the small self holds the seat, and that unity with the source shows up as humility or it isn't unity at all. The warning is theirs. The order I've given you is mine. And if it really is this simple, a seat, a name, 6 words, then the obvious question is the one almost nobody stops to ask. Why did nobody ever hand this to you? It didn't stop with him by accident. It was stopped. The councils that came after did not bury John 10:30. That's the part people get wrong when they imagine suppression as burning and hiding. This sentence was never hidden. It was defined. And a definition, applied carefully enough, does the same work as a fire. And it took them a long time. The fight over what this kind of language actually meant consumed the better part of a century. Bishops exiled, councils convened, entire regions split over a single question about substance and sonship. Nobody spends 100 years arguing about a sentence that doesn't matter. At Nicaea, they settled that the Son is of the same substance as the Father. Later, Augustine gave it the formulation that still governs how the line is read today: one according to essence, distinct according to relation. Read that slowly. It is a beautiful piece of engineering. It preserves the unity. The sentence stays true. Nobody has to explain it away, while locking it inside a relationship that exists between 2 parties, neither of which is you. After that, the 6 words meant something specific and something narrow. They were a statement about the nature of Christ. Only about the nature of Christ. And the moment that became the definition, applying the sentence to yourself was no longer a misunderstanding. It was heresy. By construction. Even the line he reached for in his own defense got quietly reassigned. When the psalm says you are gods, the standard reading became, that's about judges, magistrates, officials of the ancient court. Whatever the psalmist originally meant, notice the direction of the correction. The one verse in the whole exchange that widened the door was narrowed back down, and it has stayed narrow ever since. Nothing had to be destroyed for this one, chosen ones. The text is still there. Anyone can read it, and millions do, every week, out loud. That's what makes it such a complete piece of containment. You can hand people the key, as long as you have already told them which lock it doesn't open, and the fence is still standing. Walk into almost any church in your city this Sunday. Wait for a quiet moment and say those 6 words out loud about yourself. Watch what happens to the room. Not because the people there are cruel, most of them are kind, and they would be genuinely frightened for you. That reaction is 17 centuries old, and it was installed on purpose, and it still fires on contact. If one sentence could be fenced this precisely, the obvious thing to ask is what else was. That's what the Archon Codex maps. What got fenced? Who did the fencing? And what has been sitting on the other side of it the whole time? It's available now, Link in the description below. Which brings us back to the window you were standing outside of. You were never on the outside of that window. The glass was real. The cold was real. The feeling of watching something warm happen to other people was real too, and nobody should have told you it was ingratitude or weak faith or a sign you hadn't tried hard enough. But the house was yours. It always was. You stood there with your forehead against the glass of a place your name was already on, waiting for somebody inside to notice you and wave you in. Nobody is coming to the door. Not because you aren't welcome, because there is no door. There is no inside and outside. There is a sentence that was demonstrated in public at the cost of a life, in front of men who reached for rocks rather than let it stand. And then 17 centuries of very careful work to make sure you would only ever hear it as somebody else's biography. He said it about himself. And when they came for him, he pointed at a line that said it about everyone standing in the room. So today, whenever it lands, name what has been sitting on the throne. Say it plainly, out loud, whatever it was today. And when the seat is empty, say the 6 words, quietly, with no ceremony at all, the way you would say something you had always known and simply never said out loud. Chosen ones. This was never a claim you had to earn the right to make. It was an inheritance somebody else kept the paperwork on. If this reached you, say so. Comment, he meant me too.